Cordia Maruktrana Herin, War an honor down more gure et oil loud to the Parliament here Australia. Agus Maruktrana Herin to Firkin Ohas Aram Fen Shalivis, Gormila Markut, Asat Firkin Forja Darish of Rome Hen. Continuing in my other language, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate what a great honour it is for me to have received an invitation to address the Parliament of Western Australia and to have the opportunity of reaffirming the long and abiding bonds that are shared by the peoples of Ireland and the Commonwealth of Australia. Premier, I thank you for your kind hospitality on 13 Fulcher, the very warm welcome that you have offered to me and to the Irish delegation. We in Ireland and Winter Naherin have struggled at times to come to terms with this seismic event in our history. But over recent years, scholars and historians have combined a more complete exposition of the factors that contributed to the great calamity that was the Great Irish Famine. A calamity that led to so many deaths and so many dislocations, the scattering of the Irish in an involuntary sense across oceans. The famine was never merely an accident of nature, of course, nor can it be explained as merely some kind of historical mistake or even a series of mistakes. It certainly was not providence, as was claimed by some at the time. It occurred within the philosophical biases of empire of the time and in an embedded atmosphere of conquest and conflict. It was allowed to unfold so as to be consistent with the prevailing mindset of economic theory of the time, of land ownership, an emerging desire to intensify agricultural production, a tendency that may have had its origin indeed in the clearances in the British Isles. There is now an urgency, may I suggest, to contest what remains as unhelpful entrenched ideas of a failing paradigm of thought. The challenges of the next decade simply cannot be met with the shibboleths from the old orthodoxies. Social cohesion is fracturing, fading, as inequalities in wealth, power, and income are deepening, as labour becomes more precarious, and our societies become increasingly divided between what is often lazily described as the lucky and the left out, those on the street and those behind gated communities, between those who can access highly paid employment and those left to struggle on zero-hour contracts. Within the European Union, cohesion between the member states has declined to create a problem of connection, of legitimacy with the European street, as we've allowed ourselves to become divided by a common one-size-fits-all macroeconomic policy framework, which pits creditor against debtor, those with trade surpluses against those without, those in the north against those in the south. How should we meet these challenges? I suggest that in this century, fiscal and economic literacy may be as important to cohesion that I've been describing as under threat, may be so important to cohesion, citizenship, and democracy itself, as mass literacy was in previous centuries to universal suffrage, parliamentary democracy, and the sovereignty of the people. Armed with a critical and inquiring economics, one that does not tolerate poverty amidst plenty without question, citizens can begin to question the current dispensation and begin to imagine a quite different future than that which is so often presented as inevitable. May I, as I have in all of the speeches I've given since I arrived just over a week ago, may I begin by acknowledging that we meet today in the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people, and may I thus pay my respect to their elders, both past and present. The Irish nation stretches far beyond the boundaries of our small island state, and regularly, indeed, and with authenticity, I'll say that there have always been more people abroad than at home in Ireland. And it is the case here. Checking before I came, there are in fact actually 16,000 people who were born in Ireland living in Melbourne. There are 90,000 people in Australia who were born in Ireland living in different parts of Australia. There are 2 million people, just gone over 2 million people I think, who suggest that they have Irish heritage. Ours is a very old relationship, the relationship between Ireland and Australia. And it's rich in the different streams and the different circumstances in which Irish people have come. I have often spoken as President of Ireland of the ethics of memory and the importance of not setting boundaries on what we recall. I have said already that this has been useful in our own Irish experience of reflection on the famine, on our colonial past, and on the choices that were made and not made before and after the independence of the Irish state. It has also been important in our effort of recent decades to forge a better future in the island of Ireland from a legacy of division and bloodshed. Exploring the less palatable parts of our history has, I believe, allowed us to come to a fuller understanding of ourselves and our neighbours and our world past and present. We Irish are a migratory people, so much more than a sedentary one. It is reflected in every aspect of our being. It places responsibility on us too, as to our response to contemporary migration. The Irish have always been leaving, returning at times to leave again. There are more than 70 million worldwide who claim Irish ancestry, more than 2 million in Australia. Ireland's relationship with its diaspora is enshrined in our constitution, Bunrock na hÉireann, which states that the Irish nation cherishes its special affinity with people of Irish ancestry living abroad who share its cultural identity and heritage. Among this diaspora are the descendants of the Irish convict women who left unwillingly, but whose legacy we are celebrating today. And in recalling those special Irish women and children that we are remembering, we are acknowledging them as part of both of our nations. Your nation, our nation.
Fellow prisoners, be exhilarated, that all such monsters such a death may find. And when from bondage we are liberated, our former suffering shall fade from mind.
The exercise of scrutinizing what comprises collective memory is indeed a worthwhile one. It has the capacity to unleash, too, something that is very important in the contemporary period. Unleash a healing, such a healing as may come from the journey of remembering through understanding to what may in time make possible forgiving. The purpose of forgiving, for example, as Hannah Arendt saw it, and if I may summarize, was to rob an event of the past of its capacity to deprive one of the realistic possibilities of the present, and even more important, the imaginative possibilities of the future. In Irish, we would refer to them as na féideartaí. There is nothing truly to be gained from amnesia, though, I suggest, however comforting it may be, and everything to be lost for taking it as a strategy. For it is only by acknowledging, questioning, sometimes revising, but always remembering in an ever more inclusive way the events of our collective past that we can begin to build a collective future. As Václav Havel said so long ago and so well, words matter. And in our present circumstances, when anger is the temper of our times, we need to use our words for healing rather than wounding. Doing so with ethical, empathetic intent will, I believe, be something that can enormously help our understanding of both our possibilities and our dangers. Began this trip in Perth and moved on then to Melbourne, from Melbourne to Hobart, and from Hobart to here. And I'm so pleased to have an opportunity of saying a few words indeed to you, gathered as you are to think and celebrate. And you have great reason for celebrating the connections between Australia and Ireland. When Julie Senema was speaking, I think it's very important. Maybe I'll come straight to one point about Enterprise Ireland, about the Industrial Development Authority, and about Tourism Ireland. Sometimes when people ask you, if you, as President of Ireland, you're sitting down to a formal event and they would say to you, how are things now in Ireland? You know? And I have a previous lunch, I said, you just really say, well, the fundamentals are fine. And then you have a conversation, I said, which is rather like a medical one. But I think what you say, we have, in fact, our lowest unemployment rate in a very long time, which is very welcome. It has gone from well over 15% to what I think now is probably a true figure, somewhere around 6.2%. The debt to GDP ratio is about 103%. And looking at the performance across the sectors, 11 sectors of 14 sectors of the Irish economy are indicating further expansion for the next 2 years. The reason I am able to give you those figures is entirely because of enterprising state agencies who have continued to push exports up from Ireland. In the worst of our contraction between 2007 and 2012, Irish exports increased by 40%. And therefore, when you begin to look at this and break it down, when you look at the inquiries that Martin Shannon and others were conducting during that period of 2012, there are over 80 serious pieces of business that were completed in that time. And what does this mean? It means that those who engage with Ireland through Enterprise Ireland, through the IDA and through Tourism Ireland, know that they're talking to agencies that have a relationship with government and people that can deliver what they offer. And I'm very, very interested in this as well, because sometimes, in fact, people look at trade figures, economic figures and indicators as dead figures on the page. But success in business is achieved by trust, authenticity in the deal, and actual ability to execute according to what's promised. And they have that.
There are many lives got no way in the center of
I want to say what a privilege it is to be here. Here among the Irish in Warwick with such a long, long connection with Warwick, and who picked Warwick out of the great continent that was Australia in which to make their contribution. It has been a privilege to be with all of their descendants who have done their own scattering through different parts of this continent. But it has also been something so very, very important. For again and again, at the end of any of my speeches, it has been saying, we are migrant people with a migrant consciousness. And indeed the magnificent homily we had this morning, which suggested is that really why we are sensitizing ourselves about all of these issues is so that we will have open hearts and clear minds and take good decisions about receiving those who are today fleeing from hunger, famine, violence, and so forth. And they are the same humans on this planet as were our people at that time, as are our people now, because there are many people in the near history who would have loved to have been nearer home. But we're always moving, and we move with that concern, which is a profound moral concern. Sabine and I are absolutely delighted to see so many from us, I would call it, Cólúdar na hÉireann, so many from the Irish community here this afternoon. As I've said, when we came just over 2 weeks ago, I think that we will be bringing with us, I think both of us have discussed it, the warmest memories of the great welcome and appreciation for this state visit shown to us by every place we went. Visiting such events as I've been mentioning that illustrate our shared history. These are our forebears' experiences. But what was very important in this visit was to meet the people who are making such a great fist of things today. And also not only to hear of successes, which are easy enough to hear about, but also I wanted to pay tribute to all those who are stretching out a hand to help others, coming at any time, at any age, to a new place in new circumstances, for which you can never fully prepare. Creates difficulties and strangers, and some people are able to handle it better than others. And as President of Ireland, I want to thank any of you who have been of assistance and will be of assistance to any of our vulnerable fellow citizens, or any person who comes to Australia in difficulty. You know, when Bob Hawke visited the Oireachtas in 1987, I remember it well. I had just returned to the Dole after a temporary setback, and he said, outside Ireland itself, Australia is the most Irish of nations. And then he went on and he said, the Irish took up the opportunities presented to them and contributed in almost every field to the creation of the Australian nation and the Australian identity. Ein Tíam Leis, go leor. I so strongly agree with him, and Sabine and I are very grateful to have had this opportunity to witness personally, and we look forward to meeting your good selves, but of being able to acknowledge the many contributions the Irish in different circumstances, in different places, in all of the generations have made to this great nation that make up the Irish community, that is the Irish community of Australia. And so we will leave this afternoon enriched by the and grateful for the kindness shown to us and those travelling with me, and confident that the ties of friendship and kinship between our two countries have been strong, and I hope will have been deepened by my visit. And friends, countries do not have to be the same nor agree on everything. Good friends can bridge gaps, as I've said, of time and space, and they can understand each other, often because of their differences as well as by what they have in common, and that is so important. So on this last day of my official state visit to Australia, I salute the great friendship between our two peoples, I wish you all, Gwym Rock Rock, as Banach Doritum Talki. I so wish you every success and happiness and health above all else into the future. Ganairi Lib is gone Mila Mahaka Saktan Firkin Fortune, Arisha Dari Turon, for that most warm welcome that you have given to us. Thank you very much. Slán agus Banach. Thank you.